So good morning to everyone across the world who is joining us here at NWILL 2021. And welcome to the 20th Annual Northwest Interlibrary Loan and Resource Sharing Conference, also known as NWILL. Today's date is September 1st, 2021. And for the second year in a row, we are an entirely virtual conference. This means we are using several forms of technology and things are bound to go wrong. If you have issues during the conference, please email us at nwillconf@gmail.com. And I have that here to drop into the chat box for you as well. And we will reply to your email as soon as we can. If it is a systemic issue, please watch for us to post an announcement in the event system. You can find that on the platform navigation to your left, but it should also pop up on the screen when posted. Before I move further, I would like to invite my committee member, Carl Seward, to read the NWILL land acknowledgement.
Thank you. In past years, our in-person conferences have been held at the Sylvania campus of Portland Community College. We wish to acknowledge that this beautiful location is the land of the Atfalati people, also called the Tualatin, as well as the Kathlamet, Clackamas, bands of the Chinook, Katapuya, and Molalla. The tribal populations lived here for at least 14,000 years before European colonization. In 1855, a group of nations called the Confederation of the Grand Ronde was forcibly removed from their lands to the east and brought here through deadly forced winter marches. A reservation was established that included what is now the Sylvania campus. In 1954, the rights of more than 60 Native nations in Oregon were summarily terminated by the United States government. We acknowledge that this land was stolen through both illegal settlement and through treaties negotiated in bad faith and signed under the threat of genocide. Most of those attending this conference live in North America. The place where each of you is standing has a similar story of occupation, theft, and treachery. We wish to acknowledge that the indigenous peoples of these lands have experienced traumatic history, but also that they remain among us. Native Americans and First Nations people are a vital part of both this continent's present and its future. We encourage you to learn about the indigenous peoples to whom the land you occupy rightfully belongs. Please join me in a moment of silence in honor of the Atfalati and all other indigenous people. As a first step, I invite you to visit native-land.ca, I'm placing that in the chat, and find your local area and the peoples to whom it belongs. And then to add a personal land acknowledgement to your profile here in the conference platform on EventMobi. We are all responsible for understanding the history of colonization and genocide of indigenous people and must commit to learning, building relationships, sharing stories, and taking action to support indigenous sovereignty, priorities, and actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl, for reading our land acknowledgement, but also researching and working with the people at the Native American Youth and Family Center of Portland in creating this new permanent document for us. It is important for us to acknowledge the land we live on and events that brought us to where we are today. On that note, I want to introduce you myself. I am Miriam Wanick. I was the NWILL chairperson last year during the Great Virtual Conference Pivot, and it was so much fun I stayed on for another year. However, unlike last year, I am now the assistant manager of resource sharing at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee. For those who are new to NWILL, you may be wondering how a person in Tennessee is the chairperson for Northwest Conference. The short story is I'm born and raised in Greater Seattle, but my Washington position was a COVID casualty in the summer of 2020. And during the conference last year, Vanderbilt posted the position I now hold. So the Northwest Conference this year ended up being ran from the Southeast, although I'm currently visiting my family and friends in Seattle. But thanks to our virtual setting, NWILL really isn't just in the Northwest or even the West Coast anymore. This year, we have attendees from 43 states, some of whom had no representation last year, and 3 Canadian provinces. We also have our friends returning from the United Arab Emirates and some new ones from Egypt and Macau. And while we come from all over the world, we are all very similar. This is a breakdown of the types of libraries we work at. And while academic libraries are the majority, we have over 50 people from public libraries, several from medical, law, and tribal or First Nation libraries. The word cloud you see here is made from the position titles you provided at registration. The biggest words are interlibrary loan, library, service, and access. I also want to point out that librarian and assistant are equally represented. This is a reminder that we all work in libraries and serve our communities. In this space, we are equals. No matter what degree you hold or what your job title is, we are all here to learn from each other. Next, I would like to say thank you to my constantly working committee members. This year's team was large, but we had a lot of moving parts and helped lighten the loads of others. I would like to make a special point of saying this committee has members all over North America in all 4 major time zones, and not all work in traditional academic libraries. 2 members are from public libraries, 1 First Nation, several law libraries, a medical library, and a solo librarian at a special library. If you have an interest in being involved, please watch for the post-conference survey next week, where you can express interest in joining us next year. I would also like to thank our vendors this year. Their funding helps us keep our fees low and provides us with the ability to create a full experienced conference. Please attend their presentation this afternoon after the meal break at 12:15 Pacific or 3:15 Eastern. Afterwards, there will be breakout rooms for vendors who have confirmed their availability. Each vendor will have a passcode for our door prize game, but more on that later. Also, please join me in congratulating our scholarship winners for this year's conference. I've chosen not to reveal them in this presentation, but they are free to put something in a chat or elsewhere. Their prize this year was free registration and a copy of a professional development book of their choice from a curated list. I would like to also thank Kenneth Cruz for providing a signed copy of his latest edition of Copyright Law for Librarians and Educators, and our own Beth Posner, who I'm sure is lurking somewhere, for signing book plates for the book she edited, Library Information and Resource Sharing, Transforming Services and Collections. I've personally read both of these books, and they are great resources for both new and existing and continuing interlibrary loan and in general library professionals. Our scholarship winners and all registered attendees have a variety of sessions to attend this year. The proposals received provided us with the opportunity to not only focus on interlibrary loan, but also give us a chance to look into what else is going on. In that respect, we have a panel on tribal and First Nation libraries and what they are doing in their communities, and several about DEI initiatives. Please make sure to watch the recorded lightning rounds as well. To leave a comment for the presenter, use the chat in those presentations. It does not reset after each showing. But wait, there's more than just sessions at NWILL. There's a door prize game where a committee member will provide a code word towards the end of each session. Prizes benefit Black, women, and queer-owned businesses around the country. If you miss the session, don't worry. the game page has a clue that you can research and find the answer for. You just have to enter it in the right format. Please note that questions for that day's sessions will disappear by the following morning. We also have social rooms. Social rooms are peppered throughout the conference schedule, and they never close. Now, a lot of people may not be in one room at a specific time, but if you have a great conversation and you want a smaller room, just pick a different day and time. You can also click on a person's profile to message them or schedule a meeting, so you can have a private one-on-one conversation. We also have discussion boards. We have prepared a bunch of topics for people to talk about, but there's also request a discussion board if you want another one. I realize we're not in a face-to-face traditional conference, but that doesn't mean you can't have opportunities to reach out and talk with your fellow library professionals. Which leads me to NWILL has adopted a code of conduct. So the quick version is, and I will read this word for word, NWILL is committed to providing a safe experience free of harassment or abuse for everyone. Harassment will not be tolerated in any way. Sexual language and imagery is not appropriate for any conference venue, including talks, workshops, parties, and other online media. Conference participants violating these rules may be sanctioned or expelled from the conference without a refund at the discretion of the conference organizers. To read the full version, and yes, there is the longer version, please visit the NWILL.org website or click the link from the event homepage. I am also providing a link to the NWILL Code of Conduct in the chat box. On that note, I would like to remind everyone that this session is being recorded with permission from our presenter. They retain the copyright to any information they are presenting and may request its removal from public viewing in the future by written requests of the NWILL committee chairperson. However, at this time, it is planned that recordings will be available once captions have been added. Attendees will be notified when recordings are available. To turn on live captioning for this session, click on the CC link, the closed captioning link at the bottom of the screen, and select Show Subtitles. It may not be perfect captioning, but it's better than nothing. If you have a question during the session, please use the Q&A function in Zoom, and I will pose these to our presenter at the end of their presentation. The door prize keyword will be revealed towards the end of the presentation. Please see the door prize link in the event Mobi menu. When the Zoom webinar ends, please complete the post-session survey in Event Mobi. It is just one question and it is a session feedback at the bottom. On that note, I would like to introduce you to our keynote, Kaetrena Davis Kendrick. Katrina earned her MSLS from the historic Clark Atlanta University School of Library and Information Studies. Her research interests include professionalism, ethics, racial and ethnic diversity in the LIS field, and the role of communities of practice in practical academic librarianship. She is co-editor of the Small and Rural Academic Library, Leveraging Resources and Overcoming Limitations, and author of 2 annotated bibliographies. In addition to her research and writing, Kendrick also leads professional development opportunities and organizational dialogues designed to energize employee morale and promote empathetic leadership in North American libraries. In her daily and long-term work, Kendrick has transformed library programs, services, and culture via creativity, leadership, and advocacy. In 2019, Kendrick was named the Association of College and Research Libraries Academic Research Librarian of the Year. She was also most recently published in the Washington Library Association's quarterly publication, Alki, with an article titled Leaving the Low Morale Experience, a Qualitative Study. And I Katrina, you are welcome to push away my screen share.
Thank you.
There you go.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Miriam, for inviting me to speak at NWILL this morning. Yeah, it's still morning on my side, too. I'm on the East Coast, everyone. So thank you so much for allowing me to talk with you this morning. I recognize this is an interesting thing to be talking about. Is not necessarily related to interlibrary loan or resource sharing, but I will be sharing some information with you to help you improve an experience that you might have been going through, have gone through before, and that definitely impacts the work, both daily and long-term, that you're doing in your library workplaces. So you see in front of you my mission, and my mission is to inspire authentic collegiality and to promote well-being, share the gifts of creativity, and cultivate empathetic, engaged leadership in the workplace. And just as a quick FYI, if any person here is thinking about, if they're feeling overwhelmed, I know I've been feeling overwhelmed with the ongoing pandemic and other things that are going on before the pandemic, that the pandemic has augmented in our lives, both work and personal lives. Consider creating a personal mission statement, because when I do feel overwhelmed, I go back to my mission. And if that request doesn't fill in any of these things, it's a little bit easier for me to say no. It's still hard, but it's a little easier. So just think about that as you consider where things are going in your life and how you're making decisions. I think that creating a personal mission statement, it doesn't have to be long. It does allow you that, it's an exercise to help you clarify what's important to you in whatever areas of your life that are important to you, and then narrowing down those parameters. And it really is helpful. So, and there are other people who talk about it. Leo Lowe, I think he just became a dean in New Mexico, and Trevor Dawes have talked about professional statements and things like that, and how they work for them, and how they tweak them through the years. So I think something to consider. So today I'm sharing with you a renewal presentation. I have about an hour to talk with you. As we move forward today, I've introduced, I got my introduction. Thanks, Miriam, again. Please, if you would like, introduce yourselves to me. There are about, last time I checked, about 200 people in the room. So just put your name, your area of practice, and what television show you're interested in. I'm on Netflix, but I'm still just scrolling, so I need help. So if there's things that you're interested in, your latest television show, share with me what you're watching. As we move through that, please think about these community rules. People may share information about a negative experience in their workplace today. If they do share details or ask questions or comments, be sure not to repeat or de-anonymize those experiences or comments outside of this space. It's one of the reasons why I don't necessarily record these items or share screenshots of these items. And also, please use your mute button to prevent background noises. And even though I'm offering a keynote, I really see my discussion on morale as a discussion. It's a topic that should be discussed. And one of the reasons low morale occurs is because of the silence that surrounds it. So please share your experiences and relevant observations to your comfort. And I hope that you'll learn a lot. I know that I learn every time I do these talks, I learn something new from people who are sharing. And so I hope that we'll learn a lot together. Hi, everybody. Hi, Rebecca. Hi, Shauna, Jason. So today I'm going to share general data about low morale experiences. I've done 4 studies, and I'm going to share with you some comparative notes from the first 3 studies, which focus on academic librarians, Black, Indigenous, and people of color working in libraries, and public librarians. And then we'll briefly review countermeasures for low morale. And I hope to answer some of your questions at the end. And I do have other opportunities that allow people to have deeper opportunities for reflection and engagement, including a longer colloquium, a seminar, and workshop. So if you're interested in those, do get in touch. Let's start with the foundation of low morale. My next question for you, if you would keep going in the comments, is when you think about low morale, what are some things you think about? When you got that pre-work, and thank you so much for engaging with that pre-work, when you were thinking of low morale, before you saw that definition in that commentary, what are some things that come to mind for you when you think about that phrase, low morale? So I'm going to share with you the foundation of the studies. My studies, which I've just mentioned, I've just been we just talked about the one that was published in Alki. That was my 4th study, and I'm working on the 5th study. But my studies on low morale use qualitative methodology called phenomenology. And that's in order to capture a description of a universal essence of a state of being, an experience, a timeline, a phenomenon, really, okay? And I also use grounded theory to better identify continua threads when I look at this data. So how I gather this data is I've talked to about 60 people, maybe a little bit more now, amassing about close to 2,000 pages of transcripts. We talk for about 45 minutes to an hour, and I gather information about people's experiences of low morale. So, and these are all people working in academic libraries and North American libraries, public libraries. And my questions have been really surrounding the central idea of what does it feel like, and particularly in phenomenology, what does it mean to have low morale within the environmental and social context of the practice of librarianship? So again, it's phenomenological, it's qualitative, it's a very rigorous way to do work. I have to do a lot of content analysis when I look at the data, and then I analyze that data, and then I go back and do another methodology to see what the continua are throughout the experiences. And then I go back to the participants if I have to clarify anything and say, this is what your case study sounds like is happening. And then I go back and I say, okay, these are the common threads of these experiences. Okay. All right. So let me go back and see in the chat problems that won't be solved by self-care or pizza party. So I'm going back and seeing what does low morale, lack of motivation, inability to retain staff, anger, backbiting, running others off, ooh, siloing, too much egos, ooh. Sonia, me and you're gonna have to talk, because this is something that I've been thinking about my entire experience of getting this data that has popped up very early. And I'm just now getting back around to talking about the idea of ego in the low morale experience. So, okay, not wanting to go to work, feeling underappreciated. Thank you so much. Work carrying over into home, yes. And then insomnia. These are all great things, and they are part of the low morale experience. When I was looking at low morale, when I was trying to figure out how am I going to do the study, what is low morale in the literature at that time, it was discrete. People talking about things like low pay, nebulous, unfamiliar, not knowing what their jobs parameters were, lack of communication in the organizational change, lots of organizational change. But these are all discrete elements. But my work when I started so this is what I said. I said, hey, everyone, I'm a librarian. I'm doing this research. This is what the literature says. So if you're dealing with this in terms of the literature, I would like to hear from you. But what happened is, so the first person I talked to, they told me this story, this awful story of this abusive manager that they had. And at that point, I was like, okay, this person misunderstood what I was asking about, because the literature says that it's about this other stuff. The worst I thought I would hear for library workers was, I'm an academic librarian, so the worst I thought I would hear as I got ready for the study is that academic librarians were going to tell me that the teaching faculty treated them poorly. That was the worst I thought I would hear, okay? But as I kept going and talking to more people, I kept hearing these stories. So experientially, low morale is exposure, repeated, protracted exposure to workplace abuse and neglect. And there are several types of abuse and neglect that come up. One is emotional abuse, and it includes the actions that you see in front of you: manipulation, intimidation, thwarting, targeting. And by the way, the inverse of targeting is favoritism. But people don't really talk about favoritism, but keep in mind that if someone's being favorited, that's also maybe a form of harassment, because a person who's being favorited might not want to be favorited because it puts them in between the favoriteur and the other employers and the other colleagues, right? So targeting and micromanaging too, all right? But keep in mind that favoritism, keep in mind that, and this helps me with that empathy piece, people often turn on the favoritee, but I think it's important that in a low morale experience that in favoritism, that person might not want to be the favorite. Okay? Another type of abuse that comes up is verbal or written abuse, and that includes things like lying, public shaming, yelling, shouting, what I call ephemeral complaining, disinforming, snitching. Ephemeral and complaining is something that I call, you know, when a person keeps saying, oh, you're not doing it. Well, you know, if you would just get it right, but they never write it down and give you a firm, this is the problem, this is what needs to get done, and let's find a solution and let's move forward. But it's just, oh, something is wrong and I'm just not satisfied with you, right? So Elizabeth asks, what's the difference, what's the line between favoritism and mentoring? I think it depends on the person receiving the favoriting and mentoring, because generally mentoring, you want that to occur. That's a mutual consensual relationship. I would like help from you. You have agreed to offer this guidance. Favoritism is, I think I like you. Okay, I like you, cool, but I mean, chill with that, right? So I don't really want that kind of attention, or I don't really want to be, you're being singled out to me. A favoritism, I'm singling you out specifically because I have a certain feeling for you that I am making sure that everybody else knows that I don't have that same feeling for them. So that might be it, but it definitely, I would say, depends on us. There's that level of consent there about what's going on in that relationship. Another type of abuse is system abuse, and that's system rigging, cronyism. This includes nepotism, steamrolling, violating workplace policies and procedures. And another thing about verbal abuse, let me go back to that. Verbal and written abuse includes purposely using oral communication to circumvent things that should be written. So let's say you have someone you know you should be documenting, or if you wanted to document something, but they refuse to write it down. They just keep telling you, you say, well, can you send that to me in an email or give me a documentation for that, showing me that? And they never provide that or do that action because they may not want a record that they are giving you the resources that you need for whatever story they're trying to tell for someone else. And the next one is negligence. And negligence includes laissez-faire, ambivalent library campus leadership, a lack of advocacy, capricious decision-making, or just general ineffective communication, okay? So those are the four general types that show up consistently as I've done this research in the last 4 years. I want you to notice also that even though it's not here, more and more as I've talked to more and more people as time has moved forward, public librarians are the first group to disclose physical abuse, and that this physical abuse comes generally from library users, which is particularly it's concerning anyway, but it's particularly concerning because we're going into a place to help people and they may be physically abusive towards us. So this is an emerging area that I'm going to be watching. And I've also, in my last study on leaving, the study that was mentioned in Alki, academic librarians shared that they had experienced physical abuse during their low morale experience too. Another thing I want to share is that negligence is a form of abuse, and you may not be aware that you're dealing with negligence. When I talk to people, particularly in my first few studies, I realized that people were really, really clear on verbal abuse, written abuse, system abuse, and the other types of abuse, and emotional abuse, but they weren't necessarily talking about the negligence in the same way. I realized the negligence while I was doing the data analysis, but they were downplaying it, like, you know, they thought it was a result of the other stuff, and it sort of is, but even within a cycle of abuse, they weren't realizing that they were being neglected in addition to all these other things that were occurring. And then there was more neglect happening when they would say report it to somebody and no one was doing anything. And you can ask questions at any time as well. So and like I said earlier, I'm okay if you turn on the mic, but that's fine if you have any questions. These next few slides will show you quantitative low morale triggers. And this is the importance of asking people about their experiences, because quantitatively, when I ask people, what caused your low morale? They chalk it up solely, generally, to administrative and managerial incompetence. And then you see there's almost 20 points or so before they start talking about bullying or abuse or changes or even emotional abuse or work overload, which is some of those traditional markers of low morale, okay? But when I ask people their experiences, it looks much different. And I want to share with you, you see that 55% personality conflicts. I'd like to take a moment here to stop and share with you a piece from Resmaa Menakem's My Grandmother's Hands, because that personality piece, a lot of times when people report abuse, they will be told, oh, that's just how so-and-so is. It's been this way for a long time. All right. So I'm going to show you something. I don't know if you know Resmaa Menakem, but it's he's written My Grandmother's Hands. He is a social worker and he discusses racial trauma and how it resides in the body. And this is on page 39 of his book, My Grandmother's Hands. So really quickly, unhealed trauma acts like a rock thrown into a pond. It causes ripples that move outward, affecting many other bodies over time. After months or years, unhealed trauma can appear to become part of someone's personality. Over even longer periods of time, as it is passed on and gets compounded through other bodies in a household organization, it can become the family organization norm. And if it gets transmitted and compounded through multiple families and generations, it can start to look like culture, but it isn't culture. It's a traumatic retention that has lost its context over time. So without context, it has not lost its power. Traumatic retentions can have a profound effect on what we do, think, believe, experience, and find meaningful. What we call out as individual personality flaws, dysfunctional family, organizational dynamics, or twisted cultural norms are sometimes manifestations of historical trauma. These traumatic retentions may have served a purpose at one time, provided protection, supported resilience, inspired hope, etc. But generations later, when adaptations continue to be acted out in situations where they are no longer necessary or helpful, they get defined as dysfunctional behavior on the individual, family, organization, or cultural level. I just want to share that with you. And that's how we get, so when you think about norms of librarianship, when you come into an unhealthy organization and you have a new idea and you get told, what is the response? We've always done it this way, or even, I'm not sure why we do it this way, but let's not change it, okay? So I wanted to share that with you about those personality conflicts, but these are quantitative low morale triggers that if I had not asked about the experience, we would not have this larger understanding. These are quantitative low morale triggers for Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Again, administrative and managerial incompetence come up much higher, as one of the highest. And then they're more likely to talk about, you know, the traditional markers of low morale, right? Workplace recognition, communication problems, and not sure where their job parameters are. But look at that again, 62% personality conflicts. Okay, think about what that really looks like. What are we talking about here? Okay. For public librarians, it jumps significantly, 80% still administrative managerial incompetence. And they're likely more to talk about abuse right away and change, and particularly library administration change. Again, still on the board, pretty high, personality conflicts, okay? Think about these traumatic retentions that are being withheld in library workplaces and being counted as individual problems. So what has occurred in these libraries? 56% of participants who experienced emotional, physical, or verbal abuse indicated that the instigator was a supervisor or a manager, but a whole other 25% are colleagues. So we like to perceive that managers and leaders are perpetuating this, and it may be, but remember, most likely, where do managers come from? Managers come from the library world that they work in, okay? How likely is it that they are coming from a traumatic experience and bringing their trauma with them as they come into leadership? And we can't deny that the intra-collegial abuse as well. So that comes in with things like oppressed group behavior because they feel powerless. 76% of Bipoc participants experience system abuse from a supervisor, 64% experience system abuse from colleagues, and 60%, 59% experience emotional abuse from supervisors. And then we see here the dynamics for public librarians. 62% experience emotional and system abuse, so that's a tie. And then 50% experience emotional abuse, and 93% of the population that I spoke with who are working in public libraries experience verbal abuse from library users. So I'm going to share with you some quotes from my data. This is from a colleague from one of my studies. She said, I don't know if this, she said, there were also many instances where a formal leader had her favorites, and those of us who were not her favorites were not commented on. We weren't getting any kudos in department meetings, and many times she would just ignore us, not even say hi, good morning, afternoon, good afternoon. She would just pass by, and so that's how it was. So that's a silent treatment, right? Silent treatment is a form of emotional abuse. It's verbal abuse, but it's also emotional abuse. So you can think about how a lot of these abuses are matrical and happen in tandem with each other. They can happen at the same time too. Let me talk about low morale development. There's a trajectory here. There's a pathway that how this develops. So it starts with a trigger event. A trigger event is something that is unexpected. It creates an opportunity for a neutral or positive relationship. It switches. That's when usually people realize, oh, what just happened? Usually when that trigger event happens, the most times they'll say is, I got thrown under the bus, I was blindsided, I was shocked, confused. After that trigger event, the immediate feeling is shock, confusion, anger, worry, and then fear, because they're like, is that gonna happen again? Is that gonna happen again? What's the difference between a trigger event and a bad day at work? A bad day at work, if I'm hangry, like if you and I have a conversation and it didn't go well, I'm going to come back to you and resolve that in some sort of way that brings us back to that positive or neutral relationship. I'm going to come back and say, I need a Snickers that day, I'm so sorry. Or I'm going to come back and say, you know, I was wrong, or can we revisit that? I think there's a way we can solve this, or I'll come back and we'll resolve that conversation. A trigger event is the same. People will realize later when they look back, that trigger event will be the same event, even if there are other abuses that happen or other abuses that come along during that trajectory. It never changes, and they'll realize, oh, that's when I should have realized something was going on. And there's a thing, you know, shame. People think, oh, I should have realized it, but there's no way, and we'll talk about that in a minute. After that trigger event, people start realizing, oh, there are other events that are happening. There's a question, looks like, from NWILL.
Yeah, I just wanted to interrupt because there was a question that came in with
Okay.
with where you are. Are there workplace policies for unhealed trauma, in particular in tribal or marginalized libraries?
I do not know.
I was just curious. It was one of the ones that came in.
I do not know if they do have. That would be great. I think that as we look at policies, and I talk about this, that one of the countermeasures is trauma-informed leadership. And I think we need to go back and look at the manifestation of trauma within libraries. Then I think that's one of the things that this research has surfaced very clearly, is that there's trauma happening in libraries that we're not talking about. But I don't know of any policies yet.
Okay. Just wanted to throw it out there before we got too far past the topic.
Thank you. Thank you. Sure. So people start realizing after that trigger event, people start realizing, or they will, when they recall the experience, and then this happened, and then that other thing happened, and then this person came in and did that, and then this happened. And so as these events occur, there's a manifestation of compounded emotional and physical responses. And then the marker of the low morale experiences, though, is the cognitive. They include a negative effect, how you decide to do your practice, how you decide to interact with people, or how you decide not to do your practice is most likely what starts occurring. And you start thinking and having a negative effect on your LIS career, i.e., should I have joined? Should I stay? Where else can I go? Can I go anywhere else? This is particularly important for people who deal with emotional abuse. They start wondering about can they really do this job? I thought I was a good librarian. If people are dealing with imposter syndrome, this will manifest right then. So it has this impact on how they feel about the career in their jobs and what's going to happen for their career in the future. Here's a listing of some low morale responses: work dread, and gastrointestinal issues, sleep disruptions. So that means too much sleep or too little sleep, fitful sleep, weight loss, weight gain. And then if you have any chronic conditions, diabetes, high blood pressure, these will be exacerbated, or you might start manifesting, you might get diagnosed with these sorts of things. Particularly cardiovascular problems like hypertension. Hypertension is particularly concerning because that damages your body over time and it's difficult to reverse it. So, so those are some physical responses. Emotional responses include sustained anger, sadness, and grief. Grief is a really important one because people talk in terms of the classic cycle of grief from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. So, you know, anger, bargaining, I can't remember all of them, but anger, bargaining, depression, things like that, acceptance, things like that. And we know that the cycle is not linear. You can experience those emotions at the same time. And I also say here that people are actually, what they're grieving is the loss of the idea that they had that their practice would be, and they're grieving the loss of what they thought working in libraries would be. So it's very much a grieving process when you're dealing with low morale, because you're wondering, I've lost the career that I thought I was going to have in a certain point, certain way. Thank you. Thank you. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Thank you. And so they're not like linear, like first I'm going to deny. And then once I finish all my denial, and then now I should be angry. You can, and then I will bargain, right? And now that I finished my bargaining, I shall now be depressed. These things occur all at the same time. There's some, and you see the others here, the other emotional outcomes here. Cognitive responses, you see work dread pop up again because work dread is a somatic issue, but it's also a cognitive issue. So the somatics are your stomach starts hurting, you get your knots. When you think about having to go to work, you're on your way to work, your stomach's in knots. That's usually the way it shows up. You start sweating if you're thinking about that person. That's, if I get out the car and my abuser's walking, oh my gosh. And then the cognitive is you start thinking about, think about your night before you start your week of work. It's Sunday night at 6 p.m. and you start the ruminating. You start figuring out, okay, what behaviors am I going to do? Okay, so some of this is behavioral. And then other cognitive things are reduced concentration, reduced decision-making, reduced confidence, and increased skepticism, okay? So there we have the trust issue. Yep. That's a cognitive response. You have stopped, you have changed, you have created a behavior to deal with the low morale, right? So I would like to say here that when you feel that work dread, even if you're 1 week in and you start feeling that work dread, do not ignore those symptoms because that is your body. Everything happens in your gut. Your body knows what's going on before your cognitive mind does. So your body knows. So when you start feeling work dread, if it's 1 week in, 1 month in, don't ignore it. You know, do your questioning and reflection. Don't ignore that. Oof. Okay, don't ignore it. Your body will tell you way before, you know, your brain creates that thought. And your brain and ego will tell you other things too. So we'll have conversations perhaps one day about ego. So there's coping strategies. These are two responses that people will usually have to a low morale experience. One is coping strategies. Coping strategies are conscious or unconscious and positive or negative behaviors that people do to reduce the effects of their experiences. These strategies do not affect workplace abusers and may not change the trajectory of the low morale experience. And this is why, while I do believe in self-care, it is a coping strategy because you can go get your nails done, hair done, yoga, running, and you still have to go back into that job with that person. It doesn't affect your running and your yoga and your hair getting done and your nails getting done are great things, and the abuser's still there doing the things that they're doing. The other one is mitigation methods. Mitigation methods are conscious, deliberate behaviors that victims perform to end or resolve their low morale experiences. These methods impact the abusers or the organization and address or engage enabling systems, okay? So these are things you do, like, I'm going to talk to HR. I am going to look for a job. The most popular mitigation method by far, job search, okay? Job search. So there's some impact factors that are influencing this trajectory, okay? And impact factors are events or contexts that influence a low morale experience from the beginning through its resolution, which, by the way, is not guaranteed. But they include enabling systems, which are individual behaviors or organizational cultures, policies, structures, beliefs, ethoses that inadvertently enforce or underpin low morale experiences. And I use the term enabling similar to how it's perceived in drug overuse situations where we're trying to get people to get to rock bottom so they'll get help. Enabling behaviors are things that we hope help people in their negative behaviors, but they end up helping them do their negative behaviors. So enabling systems work in the same way. They're systems that are designed to supposedly stop low morale, abuse and neglect in workplaces, but they end up helping it out, okay? So the impact factors, one is insidious development. As I said before, people often, when they're dealing with low morale, before this research came out, they probably didn't know what it was. But usually people have said when they talk about their low morale experience, I looked up and I was in it. It's like a frog boiling in water. By the time you realize this is going on, there's a behavior pattern between you and your abuser, which makes it difficult for you to say, do things that would, cause you to stand up for yourself. Or it's harder to do something once you're in the middle of it because you've established your pattern, right? And the other one is contagion. Contagion happens when a person realizes that they are not the only person being abused or neglected, and or they start abusing or neglecting others as a defense mechanism to help them not be abused or neglected by whoever the abusers are. Okay. Enabling systems include, these are just the general ones for the general low morale study that I did, the first one. Leadership, staffing and employment, promotion and tenure, which is unique to academia, perceptions of libraries and librarians, library workers, human resources limitations, and then uncertainty and mistrust. So when you think about leadership in terms of disabling, like if I go tell the leader, then they'll help me, right? Or staffing and employment, if we just hire more people, then I wouldn't be overworked or overwhelmed. But instead it gets weaponized, right? So one person told me they were working in the library by themselves and the leader would not hire anyone else. And then they got dinged when they couldn't take care of themselves. They had a whole 12-hour shift. And when the person came in the next day or whatever, they were fussed at because they took a lunch or went to the restroom or something. So it gets weaponized in this way. Perceptions of libraries and librarians. Well, you go tell someone in human resources, or like even when I do this research, what y'all fighting about? Librarians and quiet. What y'all throwing books at each other? What y'all doing? It's like this jokey joke. So there's this idea that librarians have no problems. We just work in this place and it's quiet and it's a refuge, and the library is a refuge for others. So surely you're here just being, placid. It's a placid place. And we know that's not the case. And then uncertainty and mistrust, I'm skipping around a little bit here, but uncertainty and mistrust is the most pervasive system because when you go to another job, the uncertainty and mistrust follows you. Yeah, I wish I had an opportunity to read that portion I just read to you from Resma is about the only thing I'm going to be reading in the next 3 days. All right, so there are other impact factors for BIPOC. For BIPOC, it's insidiousness, contagion, and then stereotype and de-authentication. And then for librarians, it's public librarians, it's insidious development, contagion, resilience narratives, personal safety, and social context, okay? So there are additional impact factors in addition you know, this is what's going on. Remember, all this is happening during a workplace abuse and neglect, okay? Here are the additional enabling systems for Black, Indigenous, and people of color. So these are the ones they talked about that manifested when I talked with this group. And these are an addition to the others. So leadership, staffing and employment, promotion and tenure, so on and so forth. So these are all additional. These are additional ones to the total enabling systems for BIPOC is 14, okay? For public librarians, these are the additional ones for them. In addition to leader, the only one that they did not indicate for from the original enabling systems is promotion and tenure, and that is because that is unique to academia. But these are the ones, so they all in total, they're dealing with 13 enabling systems while dealing with workplace abuse and neglect, right? I want to share with you some frameworks. Some folks was like, well, what else is causing this outside of the abuse and neglect, which is what is causing it, and then the enabling systems are helping it along. What else is going on that frames this out even more, that allows this to go on within the culture of librarianship? Let me share with you some frameworks too. The first one, how many of you heard, if you can raise your hands, Vocational Awe by Fobazi Ettar. Fobazi Ettar defines the vocational awe as the idea that libraries as institutions are inherently good. It assumes that some or all core aspects of the profession are beyond critique. And in turn, this underpins many librarians' sense of identity and emotional investment in the profession. So we're so noble, we have to do, we're doing everything. We're superheroes. Because we are so good, then this surely can't be happening in our profession. And no one can say anything bad about us because we're just so good, all right? So how might that play out if abuse and neglect is going on, right? Can libraries be good and have abuse and neglect going on? Yes, it can, but if we're busy trying to make sure everybody only focuses on the good, then how can we fix what's going on in libraries and between colleagues working in libraries? The other framework is something called resilience narratives. And Bird, Galvin, and Toole talk about it as a concept talking about ecosystems, but really it's repackaged trauma for organizations that are in a state of perpetual recovery. And that means that workers have to do the work of revisiting organizational wounds, often at the expense of their own healing and reflection. So you'll hear resilience narratives colloquially saying as, do more with less. Lean in. Well, the cataloging department is doing A, B, and C. Why aren't you? This means that they're not recognizing that maybe the cataloging department has different resources than the department you're working in, but they expect you to work to the same standard, right? So how many of you heard that before? Feeling guilty when you say there's a problem and then you're told, well, you fix it. And the other one too, and I know we're feeling this particularly as through the last, since March 2020, burnout. Burnout really is a system of exhaustion. It's a cyclical emotional syndrome of exhaustion, pulling back, reduced feelings of personal accomplishment. This usually happens to people who do people work, and libraries definitely are people. Again, and they're different definitions. These are the two that I appreciate because it acknowledges both the emotional labor and the mental exhaustion of the emotional labor when you're working in public service fields or working with high interactions with people. Here's some information from our colleagues and a couple more data points. See what you can find or what you hear in these statements. You know, it's a hard thing because, you know, the big talk is healthcare, self-care at our library right now. And I'm like, we never talk about the stress that you're bringing upon us. And instead they're telling me I need to go home and get more physical exercise. I'm like, maybe you should stop giving me an additional job on top of mine. That might help. Another person says, I try to check out, not check email at home, that kind of thing. But I sometimes feel like, okay, you know, being on a little more or being present a little more is just something that comes along with the position. Now that's an assumption. It's sort of like you're walking a fine line between being taken advantage of and being exploited, but also not wanting to be perceived as not being committed enough or giving them an excuse to discount you. So trying to find that right balance between doing too much and not enough, okay? So in the first, we're talking about that resilience narrative and how if you just take care of yourself and do and eat right, then you can do this huge thing that we're asking you to do that you're not supposed to be doing really, but we're not going to do anything about it. And then in the second thing, I see vocational awe. Like I'm trying to be cognizant that I have identity outside of work and things outside of work. But if I feel like I do that, then I'm not a good librarian because I'm supposed to be doing, if I'm just doing this other stuff, then people won't question that I'm not a real librarian because see, I was on helping, I was on serving, I was available, even though I know that I should be engaging in other things that don't have anything to do with libraries. So I would like to share with you, give me just a second. I'm going to offer you an opportunity here. I've put a link in the chat there. I'll put it in as y'all, there it is. Go to that chat and think about that. Think of one word that reflects a value, a core value, a belief, or practice that could create a low morale experience in libraries. Because what about, there's something about the culture that could help this along, right? Can you think of any one word, a core value for LIS, a belief or a practice that, thank you, creates a low morale experience?
Having a problem because you
It's
put it
not,
in to
am
host
I?
the panelists and not
Oh,
everyone.
okay, I'm sorry. My apologies, everyone. I'm sending it to everyone, but not everyone. Apologies. So here you go. That's the link. Thanks for your patience. And let's see if I can. Ooh, hold on, everyone. I'm coming. All right. Does everyone see that screen? Give me a yay or nay really quickly. Look at that. Service. Yes. Yes, we're here to serve. That is one of the, yes. I'm going to make sure you all get this screen, okay? And we can see some second levels here. Dedication. Ooh, yeah, we have to be, ooh, they're moving around. Neutrality, yes. Resilience, yes. Service or self-sacrifice. Student success. We have to be here for the students at all times, right? Hard working. We have to work hard or else all the time we have to hustle, right? All right, dedication. I love it. Thank you. And I also want you to be thinking about too, not only here in this space, but as you leave, you know, how has the COVID-19 pandemic, has it developed? How has vocational awe and resilience narratives impacted your daily practice related? You know, what has been felt scarce to you and used as a scarcity and weaponized against you during this time? So I'm gonna go back to stop share and go back to share screen. Give me just a second, everyone. I don't see my. Oh, wow. Give me just a second, everyone.
This be a good moment for me to throw a question or two at you while you're
Sure.
pulling things up.
Yeah.
So We had one question about how do we address a toxic workplace, especially in lower ranking positions, when we might feel afraid that by bringing attention to it, it could result in us losing our job.
So this is a question I get a lot, and I appreciate this question because the answer is a hard one, okay? When people are dealing with low morale, something is already happening to you, right? Something is already happening to you. So if we're and you're sharing, and when you work with people or in general, your goal is to make sure that they understand what you will and will not, how you will and will not be treated. And I'll talk about this in the countermeasures here shortly. So the larger question, how to fix a toxic workplace, is too broad for this conversation. But the second part of feeling that you're powerless, powerlessness is a common feeling in low morale. And at the end of this presentation, I have one of my very favorite quotes by Alice Walker, who's a writer, who is a living, breathing legend and living ancestor who loves us very much. And she says, the most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. So I share with you that moral courage is required because you're already being abused and neglected. It's already happening. And so each day this occurs, you're saying, even though you don't want to say it, you're saying it, keep doing this to me. Keep doing this to me. And there are lots of ways. So the most powerful countermeasure tool is assertive communication. So you're gonna have to figure out ways to practice assertive communication that tell people what your boundaries are. That'd be great if you want us to do that when we get the resources to do that. I cannot stay any longer because my family is important to me, so I'll be going home at 5 o'clock today. My body needs fuel today, so I'll be taking my full 30-minute lunch. I'll be back in 30 minutes. These feel, when you say them out loud and when I offer these, it feels like, oh yeah, I could have said that. But I recognize it's hard. And it's hard because we establish these behavior patterns with people that go on for years, days, months, and moral courage is required. Moral courage is required. So that's my answer for that.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. I want to share with you from this group. Thank you so much again for working on the pre-work because it allows me to offer you a microcosm of your group as of 8 o'clock this morning. So here are some numbers for your group, and I'll be sharing this with the NWILL committee to share with you. So 73% of this group have dealt with or are dealing with low morale. 41% have been dealing with it for at least between 1 to 3 years. 33% have experienced emotional abuse. 2 people in this cohort as of 8 o'clock this morning have indicated that they also have dealt with physical abuse. I'm really wanting to track this. So I wanted to put that out there. It wasn't manifesting as a percentage because it was a small percentage, but I feel like it's very important for us to acknowledge that people are being physically abused in library workplaces, okay? When we look at feelings, when we talk about those feelings, those look like low numbers, and I'll show you a graph. 15% have experienced frustration. There's anger, sadness and worry, depression. The top enabling systems are uncertainty and mistrust and leadership styles. And you can see here that many people have noticed decreases in their professional engagement, work productivity, and they've increased their procrastination. And people are thinking about changing careers and they don't want to collaborate. Y'all, these are the things that librarians do. And we don't want to do them when we're dealing with these experiences. Okay? These numbers look low, and I wanted to share with you. The next graph shows you, because I asked people, choose as many as apply. But when you see this equilibrium in this document, in this graph, you see that people are dealing with several emotions at the same time. All right, so those low numbers, don't get it mixed up like, oh, it's only 13%. People are indicating several emotions at the same time. And then also you see that even though it feels like, oh, only 14% are wanting to change jobs. Again, it's an equitable distribution. So people are saying they want to do all these things. They are noticing all these things within one experience. Okay. Let's talk about established countermeasures. I mentioned one a few minutes ago in the chat, right? let's see. As I mentioned earlier, I'm okay with self-care. Self-care is great. I do those things when I get a chance. I did them a lot before the pandemic. However, self-preservation must come before self-care. Self-care can be in tandem with self-preservation, but there's no self to care for. What are we doing, right? So in my mind, self-preservation, when it deals with this low morale context, tools required for survival and deflection of acts of workplace abuse and neglect at the time the events occur. At the time the events occur. This is important because I talked about when that trigger event happens or when that abusive instance happens, people say they felt shocked, confused, thrown under the bus. That means they're also experiencing a fight or flight response. But within a fight or flight response is also the freeze response. And that is the piece that people remember because they feel shame about it. I should have done this. I didn't say that. I ruminate in what I could have done, right? So self-preservation not only helps you in that moment, it helps mitigate that freeze response. And so it also helps maintain perspective about a situation that has occurred. It helps you assess an action or an inaction that you're going to do. And it reduces those negative emotional after effects. I am an introvert. I don't know how many of you all might be introverts. I'm an introvert. And part of my introversion is when I deal with issues or things I could have said this. I have large conversations about what I could have said. I also practice often where somebody says so-and-so to me, this is what I might say. So I hope I'm not the only introvert. Something tells me I'm not the only introvert in the room. But part of that is I think about, I could have done it. Why didn't I? Oh, 10 years ago in the middle, last night, right before I fell asleep, let me think about this thing that embarrassed me when I was 3 years old. You know, those types of things, okay? But self-preservation really can help you deal with these freeze responses and work on those and reduce those negative emotional after effects. And this goes back to the question that was just asked. Self-preservation can help you create your approach to having moral courage. So what are some of those? I try to play, Jenny, but I don't do well at it. So here's some self-preservation tools. One is informal leadership. Often when we're dealing with low morale, we're waiting for somebody else to take the reins. We're waiting for somebody else to create the policy. We're waiting for somebody else to do something. I'm waiting on the manager to. I'm waiting on HR to. I'm waiting to see if anybody else notices. I'm gonna wait till so-and-so says something to that mean person who says something to my other colleague. You can lead right now. Y'all, at my formal place of work, this is my first leadership with a title position. But in fact, you have more influence when you don't have a title. I was able to move around a lot more freely when I did not have a title. I was able to do more and enact more change. Our formal leaderships, can they do things? Yes, they can. Yes, yes, yes. But informally, you can claim a lot more ground, a lot more quickly from my experience, because you're not having to wait. You know what's going on right there. If you see something, like they say, if you see something, say something. But we often wait for somebody else to, okay? You don't have to do that. Low morale is about individual behaviors. This is individual behaviors enabled by systems. So when you see individual behaviors occurring, the next one I mentioned earlier is assertive communication. Librarians, library workers generally have a problem with this because either they perceive it as aggressive, going back to the service. If I want everybody to like me. So there's this thing called library nice. Well, if I act nice, it's much better than if I'm actually kind. And even I say, I'd rather someone be kind to me than nice to me, because nice is often performative and it doesn't really help anyone. But kindness cannot be weaponized. Niceness can. Civility can be weaponized. Empathy and kindness cannot be weaponized. Either it's genuine or it's not. So out of that comes assertive communication. And if you need a broad parameter, I'm going to take it to Brene Brown. Clear is kind. Unclear is unkind. And in libraries, we often perceive clear as aggressive. when it's actually assertive. Assertive is kind. Kind is clear. Be clear. Be clear. Also, assertive communication keeps people's dignity. Now, people may not feel dignity if they not aware of assertive communication and not used to clarity, but generally, assertive communication should make people, when they think about it rationally, that their dignity wasn't compromised, okay? So this is outside of trauma. Trauma will help people read even assertive communication as mean. And that's the trauma that we're dealing with. So that's why you have to look at it in trauma-informed leadership, but always aim to be clear, assertive, and to keep people's dignity no matter what. Also, be aware of your emotions and feelings, okay? Be aware of, your big emotions. We can get big, we know what anger and happiness and joy, when you're irritated, annoyed, content, placid, okay? That'll inform how you're going to assess things and keep your perspective. Boundaries. I mentioned this before. Boundaries feel weird because you established this protocol with this person. You can enact boundaries at any time. Do it today. Start today. I'm eating lunch in 30 minutes. If somebody says something to me, I have 30 minutes. It starts now. I'll be back in 30 minutes. I'm going to the restaurant right now. I'll be back. I'll do that tomorrow. I'll get an answer to you tomorrow. Can you wait till tomorrow? Okay, if you can't wait till tomorrow, I'm definitely, you can ask somebody else. I'm not gonna be able to get that answer for you today. Time management. This helps with boundaries and what you're putting in. Do you know how your day is being spent? This also helps with procrastination and creativity. Often when we're going with low morale, the first thing we do is get rid of all the things that we used to like. That hobby that we were doing, we leave it alone. We used to walk 30 minutes every day because we liked it, we sleep in. We like to watch that television show and go to bed after that, knew that was the thing we're gonna do. We start watching Netflix binging all day. So instead of doing the things that you want, right? Yes, what do you want me to set aside so I can do that for you? Yes, when people give you on your plate, make them help you delegate. Ooh, that rhymes. When people put too much on your plate, engage them in delegation. So I'm going to go back, but I'm going to ask you here. I'm going to see if I can do this again. This is the second. Which self-preservation tool, self-preservation tool are you most likely to apply? And then be thinking about how these tools are compatible. They work together. You don't have to do one and then the other. And they're portable. How could they help you if you went to a new workplace or even personally? Okay. So they're informal leadership, assertive communication, awareness of emotions and feelings, boundaries, time management, creativity. Which one are you most likely to try out? Right today, you can start any of these, by the way, today. You can do them today. So put them in that little link. I shared with you a link and I'll send you that word cloud too. Okay. I will be continuing my work in this area. It's something that I need to continue to do this work. And so my work is ongoing. I'm looking at formal library leaders right now, what their low morale experiences look like. I'm continuing to gather data for how the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted ongoing low morale experiences. And if you're a BIPOC and you have experienced de-authentication, I'd like to hear from you as well. Let's see. And if you'd like to join, there is community. So I have a Facebook community called Renewers. If you search for it, it's a private community. I also have a website. The Renewers community is also on Instagram and Twitter at the handles that you see. And I'm always taking stories. So I would love to hear your stories. It's anonymous. If you place that, if you go to that link, you can do it anonymously and you can contact me anytime at the KatrenaDavis@gmail.com. And so, as I said earlier, this is one of my favorite quotes because I believe it's so powerful. Moral courage is required. And there's a book called Moral Courage by Rushworth M. Kidder, if you're interested in how to develop that skill. It's been very helpful for me. I'll take your questions at this time, and I thank you for this time that you've offered me to talk with you. I hope that you consider joining communities. Know that you are not alone. If anything, just know that if you have gone through this experience, and it sounds like at least 3/4 of you have, you are not alone in your experience. And that is one of the things that I'm most grateful for, that this research has surfaced, that people are not alone in their experiences. Thank you. Yes, I'll send you a book recommendation list too.
And I do want to point out that in the documents for today's presentation, there was a presentation preparation kit that Katrina provided to us. And I believe there was a bibliography on at, if my memory serves me
Yes.
right.
I'm gonna
I
stop
don't know,
sharing.
I don't remember what was on it, but or if it's encompassed all of this type of stuff, but it is there.
Sure.
Um,
So this is your word cloud for which preservation tool are you most likely to use? So it looks like y'all are really interested in boundaries and assertive communication, and I think that's pretty awesome.
and for time reason, I'm gonna pick out just one or two questions here because we do have our next session coming up, and I'm actually the convener for that one.
Okay.
Um, uh, so the first question is, how could I be an ally to a colleague who has experienced trauma?
That would depend. Wow. It would depend on what sort of trauma. Is it workplace trauma? I'm not,
Yeah,
I
it's
don't know
it's
what kind of trauma.
that's a
That's a
big
large
question.
question. I would say that if they have not gone through, my first aspect when I realized that someone's going through trauma is to get them to a trained counselor. That would be my first recommendation, is to make sure they have access to a trained counselor, or that they know they have access to a trained counselor. Um, the other thing I would say is to invoke empathetic pathways of communication. And if you're not sure, and whatever the trauma is, to have information about that trauma so you can engage. Really, what I always think about is think about people's behavior rather than the person. What is the behavior and what might be triggering the behavior, and get to that point. But if you're not a counselor or a certified counselor, tread carefully and get them to a counselor if they are dealing with a trauma. Make sure they have access to a counselor.
Thank you. And another question, and I'm only going to limit myself to the two, and I'm sorry, because there's a lot of stuff going on. Some people are able to work from home or have more accommodations based on a union attached to their job and not the job itself. How do you get fair treatment without retaliation?
Ask that question again.
So so this, I'm gonna paraphrase it a little bit. I have a feeling it's there in the, especially in the age of COVID, there are some people in which their unions
Mhm.
arrange for them to be able to work from home, but not everyone in the institution is part of the union. So some people are on campus, some people who
Well,
shouldn't be at home are at home,
yeah, this is
and it's
outside
like,
of my framework. But my go-to question always is, have you surfaced? Have you said anything? I always, a lot of times when we consider unfairness, have we talked to the people and said, what these are the things that we perceive, what is available for us? And I don't have enough information. And then if you're not in a union, what is the pathway for non-union representatives? Because if they have an authoritative body, then you have some authoritative body. Are those two authoritative bodies talking to each other? I need more information. But there's one system on one area, so that means there's a parallel system
yeah. I think
somewhere.
I think some of this is, I know some of the low morale that I've heard from during COVID has been from people who are like, my supervisor and the assistant supervisor are working from home and never come in,
Mm-hmm.
and they just have all of us in the department there, and they don't know what's going on and they don't understand. And that's just where I think that's maybe part of, and
Yeah.
it's not with the union, but it's kind of like the same type of feeling. Why are
Yeah.
you at home when I'm stuck at here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. The last thing I would say is I just put into everyone, I hope I did it right this time, I kept going to NWILL
Mm-hmm.
panel, is thank you so much for all the feedback and comments. I appreciate it. There's also, if you would really help me improve my work, if you have things to share about this session that we had today, please consider taking a few moments to offer. I know that you have a NWILL survey, but it'd be really, really helpful for me if you will also consider participating in the survey that I've put in there. Just a few questions to let me know what your thoughts are about this, what your takeaways are, and how, and then it also helps me improve my work as I continue this work, which I will continue doing. Thank you so much, everyone.
And I am copying and pasting the questions I couldn't get to in hopes of, oh, and yes, the PowerPoint presentation and resources. Katrina, are you able to pass along your PowerPoint slides and we can post them into
No, I won't be
the,
sharing PowerPoint slides, but you're definitely
oh,
welcome to watch
the
the
data?
recording.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I'll be sending the
Or
data. So
the
what you'll
data.
get, yeah, I'll send you an activity report with the things that you all did today, over the past few weeks. You all offered some data. I'll be sending that to Miriam within the next 3 or 4 days to share with you all. So you'll get the results of your low morale work, and
Mhm.
then the 2 things that you did today, basically. Yes, you'll
Okay.
get, yes,
Thank
yes,
you.
sure,
I just wanted to find out what information we're going to have to
yes.
pass along. On that note, I am going to say thank you for oh yes, thank you for reminding me. Yes, there's the passcode that I need to share. I got so caught up that I almost forgot. Thank you, people, everyone. We got some competitive people. So the passcode for this session was, this Washington State Park has 3 waterfalls and 3 lakes, and the answer is Wallace Falls State Park. And you do actually want to enter it in as it appears here. So it's Wallace Falls State Park. This is actually one of my favorite parks. I have hiked it, I don't know how many times. And that is a beautiful picture of it. I can attest that that is roughly what it looks like. So on that note, for those of you who stuck around with us, there's your key, your password. And I'm going to say thank you and goodbye. Our next session will start a little bit late because I'm going to run and get some more water.
Y'all take care. Take care
Thanks.
of yourself. You are most important. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.